what does it look like for you to experience the challenges that we face?
Love all you can love. You say what you need to say.
And then recognize those moments where we need to lean into some sort of rest, restorative activity that's going to get us back to center.
He used to say, if you got to worry about it, then why are you praying? And if you're praying, why are you worrying?
What makes you so good at how you carry out the work that you've been doing? Like, is there a specific leadership skill set? Is there a thing that makes you stand out? Welcome, everybody, to the Pancakes From Scratch podcast. My name is Ernest Comer III, and I'm excited for one more incredible conversation. I have a beautiful person here with me today, the one and only Laverne McCartney Knighton. It's so great to have you here. I'm so glad that we get a chance to sit and finally have a conversation.
Well, I'm so glad to be invited and so glad to be a part of this Pancake From Scratch. As you know, breakfast is my favorite meal, so any pancakes in it makes me want to join. So thank you for allowing this opportunity to share space with you.
Absolutely. You're more than welcome. So before we dive too deep into things, I just like to start the conversation with what's giving you energy this week. Let us know what you got going on and what's keeping you moving.
You know, what's giving me energy right now is planning. I'm planning in partnership with a major corporation here, the annual UNCF General Mills MLK breakfast, which happens on January 16th, 2023. It's the day and morning that we celebrate with the community, all that Dr. King stands for and all that he has meant for a community. So really just being in partnership with the committee that puts all of this together and just getting all of the pieces and the elements that the public would never see going on behind scenes. So I'm energized by that and energized by, really people this week. We've all had some shocking news to react to, and just energized by people empathy and compassion and, dealing with the thoughts of, folks that are dealing with mental illness and or depression and anxiety. We know this time of year, everybody is dealing with something. We deal with so much all along, but when a national figure commits suicide, as the young man from the Ellen DeGeneres show, Stephen Boss, DJ Twitch did, it just shook us. It shook us all to our core yesterday to get that news. So I'm energized by everybody's response and everybody's compassion and empathy for it.
It's incredible, man. What I noticed, I was just talking to my wife about this, is that, we make a lot of effort to build community and build a village around our family and ourselves, just to stay grounded and stay connected with people. And a lot of times you don't really realize the strength or value of that network, that community, until tragedy strikes or until there's a new need. Right. And then all of a sudden you realize how rich you are in love and like care, concern, and the passion that comes from people around you. So it's a beautiful thing to see for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and it really drives home that, we all need to be more aware of checking in on each other, as everybody's been saying, check in on your strong friends, because, we all present an outward appearance. We all present, the way we present to the public, but, internally there could be so much going on. And when a person doesn't reveal that, you don't know. But, we as community members, as family and friends and co-laborers, all those things that make us a community, we need to be mindful and check in on your strong people, check in on your less than strong people, but just check in. If somebody crosses your mind or somebody comes up in your spirit, pick up the phone, send a text. I know we live in a world of texting, but sometimes it just requires a voice. You got to just put a voice to that sometimes, because even if think about how yesterday unfolded for me, I got news that a dear friend died, and she had come up in my spirit on Sunday, or Saturday, I should say. No, Sunday. And then the news came that, she had passed yesterday morning, from a bout of cancer. And I kind of knew she had been not well, but I didn't know that it was cancer. So that on top of the news about DJ Twitch just took me out yesterday. And I just had to stop. I cried, and then I went and laid down to just go take a nap to re-energize myself. So that's what I did. I just needed to just check out and not let it take me somewhere I didn't want to go.
That's it. It's so important for us to, understand, first of all, like recognizing ourselves, where we are, how we're feeling, and then recognize those moments where we need to lean into some sort of rest, restorative activity that's going to get us back to center, back to a healthier place. Because life is going to continue to do what life does. And we just got to find ways to keep ourselves grounded and keep ourselves moving in the way we want to. So I'm glad you were able to, take time for yourself and sort of allow that moment to be what it was, so that you can move forward. That is.
Yeah, because we don't know how we're going to react to things, and grief triggers grief. We all have experienced grief in some form or another. Some more than others, some not so. But grief is a process, and it's personal. Grief is very personal. So when something happens somewhere else, it may trigger something in you that you didn't know even was there. So you have to stop in that moment and give yourself grace, and give yourself, as I always tell people, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself, so that whatever it is you're going through, you can manage it in that moment. And if you need help, you ask for help.
Got to be willing to make that request, be vulnerable, be open. I realize it can be hard for us to even give ourselves space to grieve and cry, and even be vulnerable with ourselves, let alone with other people. But it's so important.
Right.
It's so important. Yeah, and you know what? So the thing is, when I think about how I see you, and I'm sure how others see you in community, you're generally a source of inspiration, a source of even reverence. And I think the strength that people see in you is one of those things that causes a question for me, like, what does it look like for you to experience the challenges that we face? Like you talked about finding your own space, but so is there a moment for you that was such a great challenge that it began to shape who you are as a person?
Yeah. I say for me, my faith has always been so unbelievably strong. So I have always been able to lean on my faith. I always say I'm on a faith walk. I believe and trust in God and all that He has ordained for my life. So when things get tough for me, or when I face what I consider insurmountable challenges, I go to my prayer, I go to my meditation, I go to my God, and I talk to Him, and I just lay it all out and just say, what am I supposed to do? I'm always asking for that guidance and for that wisdom, because it has sustained me over the years when I've gone through my own challenges, or when I'm faced with things that may blindside me, and I'm like, why is this happening? And I question it, and I ask those questions, and like, why me? But I also know and believe that everything that happens to us is for a reason, and it's for something better. I know things happen for us to unfold in a better way, because I was taught early on that if you don't learn from those experiences, then, you've gone through it for nothing. So learning from each experience, learning from each challenge, and trying to, be better on the next round, and just saying, well, this was that time, and now I need to move on from this and move on to something else.
Yes, man. But is that just natural for you? Did somebody press that upon you? Where did that come from?
It came from my childhood, just growing. I grew up in the church. My dad was a deacon. My mother wasn't so much, a church going person, but she had a deep abiding faith. So I learned from both of them the importance of understanding and knowing your walk with God. So, and I had such great teachers in Sunday school and in Bible study and vacation Bible school, all those things that we as children of the South grow up with, those things just kind of started to shape me along the way. And I've always been a very curious child. So I've always related to other people. I've always been a relational person. Even as a little girl, I was that child running through the neighborhood, knocking on doors, checking on the elders, visiting elders. So I think, my spirit is one of relationship and one of connecting. So, and I've always been an open book. So, I'm just going to talk about it. I'm just going to say it. There's not very much that I don't openly share. So for me, I've always learned that once you can get it out, then you're able to, as my brother, God rest his soul, used to say to me, take it off you and put it on somebody else, because you don't have to worry about it. But he used to say, if you got to worry about it, then why are you praying? And if you're praying, why are you worrying? So, all those kinds of things were just ingrained in me along the way, just wisdom from people that I, surrounded myself with all my life. So I've always been in community that way. So I don't know. It just has come natural to me to just be wise in my conversation, to try to, give that wisdom where it's needed or where it's asked, but also to, try to listen and gain more understanding. But I have leaned on the word more times in my life than I care to even think about. And I think as I've gotten older, my faith has just gotten even more solid. And I know that when I can go in my private space or in my own world, and music, gospel music really soothes me. And it's my prayer talk more than just kneeling on my knees and praying to God. I listen to gospel, and I am so grateful for every gospel artist who has written words that have come from the Bible, that have, encouraged my life. And those words have taken me places. I let that feed my spirit and my soul. So when I'm having a tough moment, I can lean on a good song and get a good cry out and get up and dust myself off and keep going,
That's all right. I love it. I love it. We gotta know ourselves and know, what brings us back to life. And I think music does that for plenty of people. I think gospel music especially gets you rooted in the word and can reignite faith. That's beautiful. I love it. I love it. What I'm wondering is how that part of who you are prepared you for all these things that you are into. First of all, your resume. Hang on a second. Because, we don't have time. We just don't have time to go through your whole resume. Laverne, I seen the bio. I said, wait a minute, this is.
Well, I don't even think it's that big of a deal. But hey, I do what I do. And I've crossed a few genres of work and service. And all of it was I was led. You know, I don't think I purposely set out to study what I studied in school. You know, I've always been into fashion, and so that was my beginning, going to school for fashion merchandising, and pursuing a career in that. Well, that's how I ended up in Minnesota. I got recruited here to work for the Dayton Hudson family of companies, which, you know, ultimately became Marshall Field. So when I was a buyer in that field for years, but then I reached a point where I didn't feel like my soul was being fed and that I needed something that was going to help me make a difference in the community. And I started to think about wanting to be in the world in the nonprofit world. I wanted to do something that was going to make an impact. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know where I wanted to go, but a friend knew I was looking for a change, and it led me to do work in the domestic violence field with Harriet Tubman Center at the time. And that job found me, and I did that work for about 7 years, doing their, what I call up and out, creating messaging around domestic violence, creating awareness about the issues of domestic violence. And that was at a time when, you know, people were more open about issues around domestic violence, and that it wasn't just a woman's issue, it was everybody's issue. So I was creating public awareness messaging around that for men and women who were being abused, but also for accountability, helping people to know that we all had some responsibility in that field. Didn't know diddly about it, but definitely understood at the time, once I was in it, that, you know, there was a time in my life when I had been a victim. And I didn't know what I knew then until I was doing the work. And I'm like, wow, I was a domestic violence victim. You know, I had a former husband that was abusive, and I, you know, tried to get through that. It was, you know, my first marriage, and it didn't have the language that I had after I learned as much as I did in the field, but it opened my eyes to, you know, being able to tell my own story. But I was, again, astute enough to know that it was somewhere, I was in a relationship that I wasn't going to stay in, and that I deserved better and more. So I was able to, by my faith, walk away from that situation, but learn years later that, you know, I had been a victim, and I hadn't seen myself as that, because I'm like, well, I come from a good family, you know, I have a mother and a father. I'm a career woman, you know, this can't be the thing that I'm dealing with, but it was. So coming to, you know, to face the reality of that. But, you know, I moved on from that and, you know, built a good life. And then I moved into, back into corporate with Target, and did corporate philanthropy for them for 13 years, and learned a lot about, you know, community there, giving away their money and helping do the greater good in the community. And now I'm back into, you know, the nonprofit world again, doing work for UNCF. But I've also learned that my passions have always led me back to working with young people in some form of capacity, raising money for scholarships now. But prior to this role, I was with a small nonprofit, the Brand Lab, helping young kids in high school get introduced to the idea of marketing and creating diversity in the marketing space. So again, you know, helping people find their way into being better citizens and finding better careers for themselves.
Yes,
so
indeed.
And I've kind of been all over the map. I was, you know, I spent some time in the oil and gas industry in Houston.
Okay.
That was me saying, well, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I wasn't do retail, so oil and gas was the big industry there. So I found a role in there. Did you know, gas regulation contracts. So did a lot of regulatory stuff. Learned a lot, but then, you know, it has all shaped me into being who I am.
And that's all right. And that's all right. You know, we go through what we go through, and we live life, and, you know, we experience what we experience, but we don't always have the language. We don't always have the words to explain exactly what it is that we are, you know, working through or surviving.
Right.
But we get it done. You know what? Right. We get it done. And I have a lot of reverence for the fact that you've been able to navigate such a dynamic career that's taken you from so many different spaces and places, and just continue to thrive in all these different ways. It's really incredible to see and have exposure to. So congratulations to you on just an incredible career.
Thank you.
And now with the UNCF, United Negro College Fund, you're an area director, but what does that mean? What do they have you do?
It means I raise money. I am a development director. So it's raising money locally for local students to be able to get to and through college. So raising money for scholarship so that our student from Minnesota can have access to scholarships that are available to them. I mean, we're a national organization. I'm just one of 24 area offices. So I raise funds for the Minnesota area, which also includes Iowa, Nebraska, and the Dakotas. But primarily our focus is in Minnesota. But those funds are raised primarily through donors from our corporate sector, foundation. So I am building relationship with corporate donors, foundation donors, individuals, people who have a passion for the work that UNCF does, alumni from various HBCUs. So we raise money so our students can also thrive at these HBCUs that they choose to go to, as well as any other college. So our students are getting scholarship to go to our HBCUs, but they're also able to receive scholarship when they go to non-HBCUs as well.
Goodness gracious. So really, like any student in this Minnesota area, in the Dakotas, Iowa, if they got a scholarship from UNCF, Laverne was holding you down.
Yeah, I mean, it's various criteria, various requirements, but there's a scholarship out there for just about anybody. You know, we have merit-based scholarship, need-based scholarship, interest-based. So a student who is very persistent in looking for money can find it. You know, I always say, don't leave any money on the table. There's scholarship, there's money out there. And UNCF is just one of those major vehicles that has been around to help us do that. We're the oldest and the largest, and the most effective minority scholarship institution. So we really work, at a national level as well as a local level to make sure there's no child left behind, so to speak. If you want money to get to school, close those gaps. And it takes some work on their end. You can't just, expect it to come to you. You got to look for it. But,
if go get it.
You're out there doing your research, you'll find the money.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, man. It's great to know that impact is being had on the communities in the Twin Cities and in the area. So that's good stuff. I'm wondering about, for you, is there a career experience that you had that you would say you're most grateful for, or that's had the biggest impact on, driving who you've become?
You know what? I would have to probably say it was my time doing corporate philanthropy work for Target, a great company, but to do philanthropy in communities around the country on behalf of a corporation who really believed in, giving back and doing good, and knowing that I was representing a brand that really walked the walk and talked the talk. That really shaped my belief system in community, because I got to interact with so many wonderful nonprofits. And my focus area was Chicago. So I got to do a lot of great work in the Chicago market. And I tell you, people in Chicago are some of the best people to work with when it comes to serving and when it comes to giving, a great giving community, but also a great community of providing services. So, markets like Chicago and Detroit, and I had Seattle and Portland, a lot of communities that mirror some of the stuff that Minneapolis does. But so I got to travel the country to really talk to people about what our giving was all about and how we wanted to help shape communities in the field of arts and education and And in some arenas, from a foundation standpoint, social services, food, shelter, and, just basic needs. So Target met some of those organizations here locally, but globally, from a corporate perspective, we were working in providing art access to, underserved families, and providing education, creating opportunities to rebuild libraries and create, reading spaces for, schools that were just lacking in those kinds of necessary accoutrement. So definitely building libraries and building better communities that way. So I would say that time at Target really shaped a lot of my energy and my focus on community and loving and knowing the community from that perspective, but also being in the ivory tower, giving away money, but understanding where it was going and why it was going, and letting the organization help shape that decision, not making the decision for them, but learning and understanding more about those nonprofits and what they were doing to make their communities better.
Wow. So the thing is, you don't get opportunities like that without being good at what you do, right? Sure. Like, and I'm like, and when you have a conversation with somebody who has a really strong skill set in the work that they do, there's a sureness, there's a clarity that comes across. I'm wondering, like, what makes you so good at how you carry out the work that you've been doing? Like, is there a specific leadership skill set? Is there a thing that makes you stand out?
Well, I think it's about meeting people where they are, being authentic, being true to who you are, but also being very open and real to the people you're working with. I mean, it's easy to give away money and not really get to know who you're giving it to, or not getting to know what that organization is doing to make communities better. So for me, it was always about understanding the nonprofit, understanding their role in the community, and asking them, what their needs were, and actually trying to come from that perspective of giving and not making the decision for them, but, helping to shape what they already were doing, and acknowledging that they were the expert in serving community, but giving them the space to know how best to use the money, and not saying, well, it's restricted over here and you've got to use it for this, and this. But, really focusing on their outcomes and making sure that we were making, as I would say, giving a strategic yes and a thoughtful no, because you can't say yes to everybody, but also be thoughtful about what your no means. No might mean not now, but it could mean, we can come back later and renegotiate this. But being strategic in who you say yes to, and not just give the money to the same organizations that are well known and the big names. You got to deal with the little people who, are in the trenches doing, the hard work, and not being able to get the funding they need because they don't have grant writers and they don't have, expert to be able to write a grant to make it sound just like what the donor might need to hear. So really getting to know the people on the ground is what I think made for good leadership in making the right decision in corporate and as a corporate philanthropy, a corporate corporate social responsibility, just being responsible in the decisions that we were making.
That I think people miss that. I think it's one of those things that's easy to overlook for people, recognizing the power of authenticity, the power of building relationships, and the difference that it makes, especially in work like that. That's right. Yeah, it makes
and also recognizing that you don't do the work alone. You've got a team of people helping you, and I think really listening to everybody's input, taking all that input and trying to make the best decision. You don't make those decisions alone. So really building a team to help work it through.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So you can come to that strategic yes and that thoughtful no.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wrote
Yeah.
that down. And she was wondering. Yeah, I'm keeping that. I'm gonna give you credit the first time.
Yeah, I've always remembered that, give a strategic yes and a thoughtful no. Because to say no to somebody is hard. But you got to give them, clear understanding of why you're saying no now. Because it may not be no always. For now, you don't fit our guidelines, or the work you're doing isn't in the parameters of what we're funding right now. But maybe down the road something will change, and I'm sure a lot has changed. I left Target in 2013, so a whole world has unfolded since 2013. So
listen, a whole world,
a whole world has reshaped itself.
Yes, absolutely. But what's interesting is how fearful people are of the difficult conversation, right? When it's time to tell somebody no, there's so much trepidation, there's so much anxiety around what that conversation is going to look like. How do you prepare yourself for those conversations? It's because it's fun and exciting when even if it's a strategic yes, it feels different.
Yeah,
How do you
it does.
prepare yourself for those no's?
I think you do the hard work of really understanding again what the mission is, and where it might not intersect with the business need. Because at the end of the day, businesses are in business to make profit. Nonprofits are in business to serve. So you got to find that way that the intersection makes sense. But really being careful and thoughtful again about why you're saying no, and giving them the here's what you need to do, or here's what we can't do right now, but here's some things you can do that might make your chances of getting a yes the next time. Because and sometimes it's just a flat no, because you don't fit and we don't fit. Yeah, sometimes you just got to say it, you don't meet the criteria. And that's the same thing, even in the work I do now with, scholarship with students. Not all students are going to receive the scholarship that they're applying for. And because, priorities are different, and, you might not have done the work to get that essay written the way it was supposed to be written, and, not completing the application, that's the biggest challenge. Do the work, complete the application. If you do that, then your chances are already 100% stronger. But if you don't finish it, then it's just a flat out, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I know students don't always get that sometimes, but that is really the key. It's just like, be thorough. And organizations are very thorough, and when they're applying for money, because I'm having to be on that side now where I'm asking for money. So I understand and know that when you're asking for money, you got to, cross every T and dot every I, and make sure you're giving truthful answers to, what the company is asking for. And sometimes you say, oh, well, this don't even make no sense. Why are y'all asking me for this? Because, what I also have learned is that, having been on both sides, giving the money and asking for it, sometimes you just got to be real with the organization and saying, well, are you guys using this data for anything? Is it really necessary that we provide? And companies have been really shifting and really hearing and listening to nonprofits say, the time it takes for us to spend filling out all of these, requirements for asking for money is not conducive to us being able to, do the work that we're doing. Do you really need all this documentation? Are you reading it? And that's the other key that I learned being on the giving side, is sometimes, we were asking for stuff that we didn't necessarily really need to follow up on. So why put the organization through all of that? So understanding what the needs are on the nonprofit side, to me, is how you prepare yourself for really making the right decision. Understanding, that they spent time sitting there writing that grant, or hired a grant writer. Those are resources that they've had to expend to be able to provide you information. And then if you're going to take 5 minutes to read the application and not make a a good decision, then what was that all about?
There you go. Absolutely.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think it's important for folks on the asking end to step into those conversations with some agency, with some authority.
Right.
And, being accountable for, to your point, like doing the work. Absolutely lean in, get it done. And be willing to have the conversation around what's the value and the effort that's being put into it. Going through that for sure. I love it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, listen, part of the reason that I put this podcast together is because I see a ton of value in the space between food and culture and the moments that create the people that we become, right? Like that's why I call it the podcast, the Pancakes From Scratch podcast. And I tell the story all the time, but my parents love making pancakes from scratch with my kids. Now, first of all, people love their grandkids more than they love their kids. That's another conversation. We got to talk about that later on. But I remember, as a kid, I love French toast. I would ask my parents all the time, can we have some French toast? Can you make some French toast? Right. We don't have time. We don't. Okay. You can't put no bread and eggs together, but you can make pancakes from scratch all day long. Okay.
I love it. I love it.
But that's like, there's something to be said about the experience of the cooking and the spending time together, sharing a meal, all that stuff. It helps us to craft the people that we become in the future because of the moments that we share with one another. All that leads to the question of, do you have a favorite food growing up as a child?
A favorite food? Well, like I said, I have to, again, my favorite food is breakfast. I mean, anything breakfast. I'm an omelet girl. I'm a pancake girl. I'm a waffles girl. I'm a French toast girl. Love bacon. I guess I would have to say bacon. It's like, give me some bacon and I'm a happy person. But growing up also, I have a German chocolate cake is my favorite cake. And I make it from scratch. So I have my mother and my sister's recipe. So German chocolate cake here gets made twice a year, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So my family knows if it's not Thanksgiving, if it's not Christmas, it won't be a German chocolate cake being made, because that takes, a lot of time in the kitchen, a lot of passion, a lot of, pulling it together. And my mother's no longer here. So even though I've made it many years since she's been gone, I still will call my sister and get some guidance on, learn something new every year about how to make it even better. Am I beating it too long? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? How do you do this for your pan? So that is a labor of love for me, making one and then eating it. So that's the request I get for the holidays from friends here. It's like, oh, you're making your German chocolate cake. So I pride myself in German chocolate cake.
All right, so I sound like I need to be reaching out in a little while here about me some German. Let me write that down. Can you hear me?
You do one.
I love it. That's all right. That's all right, man. It's like I said, those moments, those opportunities, making the call to your sister and having that conversation is not just about the fact that you get to eat something that you enjoy eating, but it's all the pieces that come along with that. And I know breakfast, first of all, breakfast in Texas is different, okay?
Yeah.
I know you growing up in Texas.
Yeah, big in Texas. My whole family, we gather for breakfast, and, the homemade biscuits, everybody lines up to get the homemade biscuits. Now, that's something I know how to make them, but not something I do. I did it in home economics because I had to, and made a few at home, maybe in my earlier years, but I never think about making homemade biscuits, not when, what is it, Pillsbury or whoever it is. Yeah, grands. I get grands just as close to homemade as I can get.
Come
So
on.
I'm good. Good.
I believe it. They make it a little bit too easy for you.
Yeah, they do. They do.
That's all right. It's all good. No, it's just yeah, I just have an appreciation for, what life looks like when we are making time to spend with one another, when we're putting our hands to work, having a good time, sharing a meal. That stuff is powerful. So I love those stories. I appreciate you sharing. Yes, indeed. Now, I don't have a whole lot of more questions, but I want to make sure before we wrap up, I give you a chance to just share some insight, advice, perspective, just the last minute thoughts with our group, our audience. Any last things you want to share?
Well, I don't, I think if we can, again, especially during this season, stop and take a moment to really reflect on the world around us. So much is happening, so much negativity, so much hate, so much focus on things that aren't really moving the needle forward. So we've got to really embrace our families, our loved ones, because so many of us have lost people over these last few pandemic years. I lost a brother. So it has been very awakening to me to know that I am missing a link in my family. We come to expect that we will lose our parents before, we go, but what I've learned in losing a sibling, and I'm one of 5, and my brother, I have 3 brothers and a sister, and my brother that died was the youngest of the boys. He hadn't made 70, so he died before he turned 70 of COVID. And what it has taught me about that loss is when you lose a sibling, you lose a part of your past, your present, and your future. So it just, you feel those voids sometimes. So I'd say, love all you can love. You say what you need to say. Check in on your loved ones. Check in on your friends. Check in on the strong ones. Check in on the weak ones. But just be present. I think that's the message I would really want people to just be present. We all are distracted these days. We have so much that takes our attention away from the day, the moment. Be in the moment and try to, see each other and hear each other, because we're not always listening and we're not always looking. We're just so busy moving on to what we got to do next, or doing our thing and being, self-absorbed in social media. But, see each other, be present so that we can build community together and build a better world. Because right now, all of us are needed to do the work. And there's so much work to be done. I mean, we've been in these political fights. We've been in these, I don't know, every civil unrest and hate mongering and just, pitting people against each other. We don't need that. But I think in community, we can do so much more together. And I mean, we've got a great community here in Minneapolis and Twin Cities, a lot of good going on, a lot of, businesses are thriving, Black-owned businesses are doing the work, and a lot of nonprofits are serving communities well. So I just say, let's just all keep focused, keep ourselves moving forward, and do the work that needs to be done, but be gentle and kind. To be kind. Let's just learn how to be kind, because we're seeing so much violence. And find a way to help, our young people who feel like, they're not being seen or heard. So they're out here creating their own narratives, and it's a ugly world we're living in right now. And I think we can do more to shape it better than we have. And we've been in some unprecedented time in this pandemic, and the civil unrest, the murder of George Floyd, all these things that made us all stop and pay attention, because it really I don't believe what happened is a coincidence. It was needed, and God was telling us something then, and he's telling us something now that, we have to, do better, because we are not on the right path in so many ways. So I'll get off my soapbox on that one.
No, I love it. I love it. I appreciate you so much. You are a true inspiration. I want you to know that you're someone who brings a special kind of light to the world we live in, and to have the opportunity to experience your presence and to be able to even have a brief conversation is something that truly gives me energy, gives me life, and I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you, Ernest, for putting this all together. I, didn't know where we were going to really land in our conversation, but, I definitely was prepared. I thought we were going to talk about trauma, but we didn't necessarily have to weave it in totally. So I think where we've gone was probably the right place to be, and I'm just grateful that I've been able to serve in this community of the Twin Cities. It's a great community to be a part of, to have done corporate work, to have done nonprofit work, to have done community work. And I believe authentically that community is where I'm supposed to be. And I embrace it. I love it. What you see is what you get.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's all right. I love it. I love it. Now, if there's other conversations that you want to have, I would love to have you back. If, we can get into trauma, because it's a lot of trauma in the world.
Yeah, it is.
And it's something that's very, very important to talk about.
Yeah, and how we all kind of deal with it in many ways. I had given a lot of thought to, what were some of the triggers in my life? What are some of the things that I've gone through and how I bounced back? I'm amazed at myself that I bounced back in some instances, because, we don't always know that somebody's gone through. I always say I don't look like what I've been through, but I haven't been through as much as what others have been through. And now everybody's story somebody can always give you a bigger story than yours. But, what we experience is what we experience for ourselves, and it's how we deal with it. It's not even, what we go through, but it's how we come out, how we come out of it. And that's important to me, that I've been able to stand firm, stand strong and maintain and share, because your sharing helps other people. It may not be the story you want to always tell, but somewhere your story helps somebody else. And that's all we can do, is tell our story. And if somebody helped along the way, then you've done it for the greater good. And that's the key right there. Keep doing the greater good. Yeah. That's my message.
I love it. Thank you so much, Laverne. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
I have, I'm on all the social media platforms. So I'm on LinkedIn, my full name, Laverne McCartney Knighton. I am on Facebook under my full name. And I think on Instagram, I think on Instagram it's my full name. Twitter, I'm done with Twitter. I won't be doing that anytime soon. So yeah, those I'm easily reachable. So I welcome the opportunity to share and talk with others. Because I feel like, I'm a small town girl, came to the city, came to the big city, so to speak. But Minneapolis, Minnesota is a small city within a big city. I think what I love about the city is you can make it what you want it to be. You don't have to get lost in the maze of people, but you can find your community, find your network, find your tribe, and build family that way. I've been able to build a great family of friends and network socially. And I try to connect people as much as I can. The word on the street about me is Laverne knows everybody, and everybody knows Laverne. And I embrace that. I wear that. It's like, well, it is who I am. I do really want to make sure people are connected in some kind of way to whatever they might need to be. I may not have all the answers, but I definitely want to make sure that people get what they need and being connected. So I am a connect.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being that for us and for people around you working with you. Listen, I'm gonna keep doing my thing. I pray you keep doing your thing, and we're gonna stay connected.
All right, anytime. Take care, my dear.
You take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.